And I think that for the most part, some of the things that you and Senator Sarbanes and others laid out in terms of how we might be able to turn this economy around might be of some interest to our viewers this morning, because I think that many of them, they're simply searching for what we're doing, and it seems to a large number of people that nothing is happening now.
Well, Senator Sarbanes, and Senator Sarbanes is chairman of the Joint Economic Committee, a very brilliant man, I might say. You and I were chatting earlier. He's a Rhodes Scholar and a distinguished graduate of Princeton University, Harvard Law School, a self-made man who came from really very humble circumstances to educate himself. But he's brilliant, and I've had the opportunity to collaborate with him, work with him, to try to develop an economic plan that we think will stimulate the economy. And what we want to do, Dr. Haney, is to take some of the funds that are presently being spent on the military and for military procurement and flow some of those funds into the civilian economy. That is infrastructure development. What I mean by infrastructure development: repairing roads, building bridges, building schools, hospitals, wastewater treatment plants, water lines, all the sorts of things that will make establish an infrastructure in which industry can move in and work out of and create jobs. We also want to flow some of that money into retraining workers. We find that so many workers are being displaced or losing their jobs as industries move offshore out of the country or as an industry shuts down. These are good citizens. We have an obligation to retrain them, to train them for new jobs, to put them back to work. And interestingly enough, one of the ways to really reduce the federal budget deficit is to put people to work. We find that for every 1% the unemployment rate goes up, and that when it goes up 1%, that means about another 1 million people roughly have lost their jobs. Do you know it costs the federal government about $30 billion in lost taxes that these unemployed people would be paying in if they were working? So one of the ways to deal with the deficit is to put people to work and get a full employment economy again.
Well, Senator Sasser, do you think that you're moving in that direction in terms of trying to get that kind of legislation?
Well, I must say to you, in all honesty, Dr. Haney, that we're not getting any support out of President Bush and his administration in trying to do this. We're going to continue to try to persuade the administration that we want to work with them to try to develop an economic stimulus program for all of the country. But so far, they have resisted our efforts. And I think it's really critical that we get some economic stimulus going in the country, because if we let ourselves just sort of wobble out of this recession with no substantial economic growth, we fall off into another recession a year or two down the line, we're going to see the standard of living and the quality of life for all of our people continue to decline. And I don't think anybody wants that.
I think one of the ideas that you introduced during that C-SPAN, I think it was C-SPAN, I think I said CNN earlier, I think it was C-SPAN.
Many people get it confused.
But I think one of the ideas that you introduced during that time was that this recession not only has national impact, a national impact, but it also is a drag on the local and state economy. Why don't you explain that and explain again, Senator, the difference between the so-called firewall. Many of our audience viewers might not understand about the difference between the military aspect of the budget and the social aspect of the budget. And why don't you talk about that for a while?
Well, Dr. Haney, I want to say that you are a very astute watcher of C-SPAN. You to pick up these things. But number one, the state and local governments, the state of Tennessee, the city of Nashville, as a result of the economic recession, less taxes are being paid in because people are unemployed. They in turn are laying off city or state employees and also damping down on state and local government spending for education, roads, a whole host of things. This puts an economic drag on the whole economy. And we totaled up the economic drag of all the states and local governments probably amounts to about a $50 billion anchor that we're trying to pull along here as we move to economic recovery. Senator Sarbanes and I felt that it might be worthwhile to flow some federal funds back to state and local governments and let state government and local government use these funds to get state and local government programs going, rehire teachers that had been laid off, sanitation workers that had been laid off, put everybody back to work. And this would stimulate the economy. Sort of the same kind of pump priming the government did when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. We think that's what ought to be done.
And of course, this peace dividend, I think many people have anticipated much more happening on the domestic front, Senator, since the end of the Cold War. And I think that we've all declared that the Cold War is over now. Now, what about this peace dividend? Do you think that we'll be able to, those of us who are concerned about domestic programs and whatnot, do you think that we'll be able to get anything out of that peace dividend?
Well, the Cold War is over, and we won it. Now, we're having a tough time getting some people to understand that. They want to keep on flowing hundreds of billions of dollars into the military budget, continuing to buy super sophisticated, highly expensive weapons like the B-2 bomber that we really don't need in this world we live in now. The Secretary of Defense, Mr. Cheney, said that the peace dividend is peace, period. Well, that is, we're delighted to have the peace, but I think also we can reduce the defense spending rather substantially over a period of years and flow that money back into programs for our people. I think it's time that we start investing in our people once again, investing in America once again. For almost a half a century, the American people have borne the burden of defending the so-called free world with our treasure and with the lives of our young people. Now, we have been successful in that. Now, it's time for us to look inward again and start investing in our own people, investing in our own country. And that's where I'd like to see that peace dividend go.
Very good. Senator Sasser, we've got about a minute and a half or 2 minutes before we end it for today. Is there anything else that you'd like to say during these last 2 minutes, or any final comments that you'd like to make in regard to anything that we've talked about, or perhaps something that we've not had an opportunity to talk about?
I just hope, Dr. Haney, that people will pay very close attention to these elections, the presidential election that's coming up this year. This is going to be a very critical election for all of our people. There's some very important issues that have to be decided. What's to be done about health care? What is government's role and responsibility in health care? What's to be done about reinvesting in our country? What's to be done about trying to realize a peace dividend? All of these things are going to revolve around this presidential election. And I'm hopeful that your viewers will watch this with great care, inform themselves, and cast an educated vote.
Well, Senator Sasser, let me thank you for coming by and taking time out of the schedule. I know that you're very, very busy. I've been trying, as I indicated earlier, for the last 18 months to get you in that spot.
Right.
And we thank you for coming by and giving us this information this morning. And we would simply like to encourage you to watch us this coming Sunday, because the show will be aired this coming Sunday. And again, let me encourage you to tune in again next week for another informative edition of Comments. Thank you and good morning.